One of the things we do on YouTube is we are trying to take 8 hours of research and put it into an 8-minute video. Well, the only way to do that is if you master and learn the law of simplicity. I think one of the biggest mistakes that content creators can make is they think that just because of good editing or good lighting, they're entitled to viewership and entitled to people caring. The better approach is the opposite approach. You know that I don't recommend starting a podcast. I recommend starting a video podcast because of the visual element. Could you level up your video with B-roll, with supplemental clips and footage, with drawings, with props, with animation? This book is the cheat code for creating better content. It's packed with practical tips for content creators. And in this episode of the Think Media Podcast, we're going to be looking at some practical tips, including 10 ways to immediately improve your videos and get more views, 3 powerful laws of communication and how to apply them, why your current videos are not getting views and how to fix them, and then tips for mastering the ultimate skill for building a personal brand and a profitable online business. The book is The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication by John Maxwell. And I read it so you ultimately don't have to, but of course, if you want to check it out on audio or the physical book, we'll link it up in the description down below. But why is communication so important? Well, according to Harvard Business Review, the top criterion for professional advancement is effective communication. I think we realize that essentially what YouTube videos are communication. If you're going to be on camera, or even if you're not on camera with a faceless channel, if you improve as a communicator, your videos will improve. Warren Buffett emphasizes the value of honing communication skills for personal and professional growth. And he talks about that as being the peak skill necessary for earning more. And so today we're going to cover 3 of the 16 laws and some tactical tips underneath each of those. And again, if you want to check them all out, pick up the book. Number 1, the law of content. This states that when we have something worth saying, people will listen. I think one of the biggest mistakes that content creators can make is they think that just because of good editing or good lighting, or just because they make a video, they're entitled to viewership and entitled to people caring. I think that the better approach is the opposite approach. We should feel like we are not entitled to views, not entitled to subscribers, not entitled to people's attention, and that we have to earn it, that we have to work for it, that we actually have to come up with something that is worth saying. And I mentioned 10 ways to immediately improve your videos. This law is packed full of practical tips, and here are a few. Great communicators bridge the success gap and relate to their audience. One of the most powerful things you can do in your videos is understand that people want to know about your struggle before they are open to learning from your success. Videos that just brag or just talk about the result without the struggle fall flat from making a true connection with viewers. Hopefully on YouTube, if you are sharing an answer to a problem, if you're helping people reach their goals, you're not just telling them the solution. By the way, that will please people, and there's no reason you can't get views from that. But if you want to strengthen your content, you want to bridge the success gap. Are you articulating your struggle? Think about it. When you hear a public speaker, if all they get up on stage and do is brag about how successful they are, it actually builds a wall. But if at first they relate that they've been there, they've struggled, they've also been through the process, and through pain and trial and hardship, they have found a solution and now they want to share that solution with you. If you can weave that into your content, it'll be more powerful. Start any message by understanding your audience's perspective. Whew! Here's the question. Before you sit down and outline your video, do you truly understand who your audience is? Do you truly understand their feelings, emotions, needs? We say at Think Media, the creator who understands the viewer best wins. So if you're going to start a video, you want to understand your audience's desires, perspective, point of view, beliefs. And the big mistake is 99% of content creators don't even know who they're making content for. And even if they think they do, a lot of times there's a disconnect in that area. Identify and operate within your strength zones for credibility. It's a good content tip. If you try to create content about something you're not strong at, you're going to lose to somebody who's stronger at that content. Personally, I try to stay in my lane. There's a lot of things where I'm happy to go on a video podcast and be interviewed about. And there's many things where I have no clue about. When I think about my strength zones, if you want to talk about YouTube, let's go. If you want to talk about business, let's go. Marketing, let's go. If you want to talk about the Bible, let's go. If you want to talk about politics, I don't know. If you want to talk about pop culture, I kind of know. I'm not going to go work at BuzzFeed. I'm not going to go work at TMZ. Those are not my strength zones or my passion zones. And so you're going to have maximum credibility when you operate within your strength zone. Have a clear thesis for your message. It's the core of communication. Are you starting each video with a clear thesis? And one of the things I loved about this book is, again, I was thinking about how it applied to YouTube videos, but you don't hear a lot of people using that language, which it reminded me being back in English class in high school. I was like, that's true. A video should have a clear thesis. It should have a core to its communication. And are you trying to communicate too many things in one video? Is the point unclear in the video? Is your communication generally foggy? Clarity is power. So do you have a clear thesis? Another point here is research is crucial, both for specific talks and for continued personal growth. One of the ways to power up your content is to improve your research. So how can you invest more in research, develop your skill of research? And I liked that John highlighted the benefit of it not just being powerful for the content itself, but also helpful for your continual growth. One of the things I love about doing this podcast, one of the things I love because I actually am passionate about YouTube and video marketing and social media, is I've created a job that I enjoy doing, meaning I like to research about YouTube, but when I do, I get smarter and I grow my knowledge, and I include that in videos, and you get to benefit, and I get stronger. Hopefully the content gets better. It's cool to be in a position where the monetization loop is helpful to fund being able to do this full time. And I know that that's also what your aspiration is as well in your particular area. But I want to encourage you to the development of the skill of research and the inclusion of good research in your content will make it stronger. Outlining provides a structure for your message. Can you outline your videos? Numbering your points or using mnemonic devices can make your message memorable. Can you number your points? That's why we're doing 3 points today as well, by the way. And a lot of times I like to outline and have numbers so there's structure to the content. And then mnemonic devices could be something like in our tech episode, we talked about AVL, audio, video, lighting. Maybe your points are connected to a framework of some kind. In fact, we're going to talk about the 4 H's, the 4 primary connection points of communication in just a second. It's 4 H's. It's kind of a mnemonic device that John created that we'll touch in just a second. Craft messages using research, illustrations, and stories from your own life. There's a couple ways to power things up. And I love this. Every message is like an airplane flight requiring a successful takeoff and landing. Good takeoffs can be built using questions, quotes, connections, while landings should summarize and empower the audience. Now, there is an old joke here on the podcast and at Think Media that I'm always landing the plane and that I'm, taxiing to the terminal, and that we're stuck on the tarmac and that we're circling the airport, and this joke that I can't land the plane. But every message is like an airplane flight, and those are some powerful tips for hooks. Can you open with a question? Can you open with a powerful quote? Can you open by making some kind of connection? Of course, the goal in communication is to connect with the viewer here on YouTube. And so we've already covered a lot, and we have 2 full more laws to go through and the 4 primary connection points. But here's a summary of the bullets I just hit. Can you relate in your content? Do you understand your audience's perspective? Can you play to your strength zones? Do you have a clear thesis? Are you doing your research? Do you have a good outline for your content? Are you numbering your points? Can you include illustrations? Can you include stories? And every communication is like an airplane flight. There's 10 little nuggets under the law of content. And before we go to the next law, here's the 4 primary connection points of communication. Heart, help, humor, and hope. And so it's crucial to identify and lead with your best connecting strength. So which of these four is your strongest? Heart. This means genuine, heartfelt communication based on empathy and authenticity. I think we can all improve our content. This is a cheat code for content creators. If your videos can be more authentic and you're not faking it, you're comfortable in your own skin, you've figured out your own voice, when you've got empathy for the viewer and that's communicated through the camera, when you're speaking from the heart and you're being genuine, and this might take some time to develop, not only in the skill of communication, but getting aligned with the topics you're covering with your channel topic. Heart is a superpower. And for some of us, that might be your primary superpower, or for others, it might be a little bit more of a weakness. So let me know if that's yours. Help involves offering practical advice and tools for change. This is probably one that I lean to. I want to develop them all, but I am obsessed with crafting content that's actually helpful, that's value-based, that answers specific questions, that solves specific problems. Humor is about seeing the lighter side of life and connecting through laughter. If you have a gift of humor, that's a powerful way to improve your content. Hope entails showing future possibilities, inspiring belief in a better future. Maybe some people you watch because you feel encouraged after, strengthened after. Your purpose in watching is to get your mind right, your motivation up, to get your mood shifted, your emotions charged. And so 4 elements: heart, help, humor, and hope. One of those is probably your strongest, but if you improve even marginally all 4 and have a heartfelt message that solves someone's problem, that makes them laugh in the process, and that ends with giving them hope, talk about a powerful message, a powerful YouTube video. Now, let's hit the other 2 laws, but if you watch the YouTube version of the podcast, smash like and rate and review on audio. But let's hit number 2, the law of simplicity. The law of simplicity. Einstein suggested that if you can't explain something simply, you might not understand it well enough. So effective, simple communication requires significant effort. It's easier to be verbose than to be concise. The reason I wanted to include this law is I actually think that this is one of the ultimate opportunities for YouTube content creators. Hey, we're about to get back into the podcast in just a second, but I have a question for you. Do you want to grow your personal brand this year? Do you need more leads and sales in your business? If the answer is yes, then right now is the best time to go all in on YouTube. Today's podcast is brought to you by thinkmasterclass.com, where you can get on-demand access to a 1-hour deep dive training revealing how to start and grow a profitable YouTube channel this year. For a limited time, you can get access to this on-demand class entirely for free, where you will learn the 3 biggest mistakes that people make when starting a YouTube channel, the new rules and changes that have been happening on YouTube and how you can use them to create an unfair advantage, and the exact strategy we use at Think Media to generate over 350,000 organic views every single day. The data is clear. 70% of viewers claim that YouTube makes them more aware of new brands. So don't wait any longer to start growing your brand and business with YouTube. Just go to thinkmasterclass.com to get access to this no-fluff, highly tactical, free on-demand training. That's thinkmasterclass.com. One of the things we do on YouTube is we are trying to make complex things simple. We are trying to take 8 hours of research and put it into an 8-minute video. Well, the only way to do that is if you master and learn the law of simplicity. We're trying to take 8 years of experience and put it into a 45-minute longer form YouTube video or a web class of some kind. The only way you do that is not by being more verbose and more complex and adding more information. You actually do that effectively by simplifying content down. And a lot of the channels I review or the creators that I give feedback to struggle because they're over communicating, they're adding too much information. A lot of times their content is full of too much data, not enough story. They have not distilled down the content. And according to Einstein, if you can't explain something simply, you got to work harder. You might not understand it well enough. So I really emphasized, and it stood out to me, that John Maxwell was like, effective, simple communication requires significant effort. If you think this is hard, good, because it is. And the reason you'll be rewarded with views and subscribers and channel growth is because you did something really hard. You processed and you thought and you wrote it and you rewrote it. And when it wasn't quite clear, you kept working until the clarity was tangible. You're like, whoa, that's very complex. And I found a simple way to communicate that. Also remember that the most effective messaging when it comes to the internet, social media, this is one of the points. Clarity should be the first goal. If an 8th grader can't understand and explain your message, it isn't simple enough. Law of simplicity. So you're going to see bigger growth on your YouTube channel if you've been communicating maybe at a too complex level, 10th grade, 12th grade, PhD. Well, there's a reason why it's not working at a broad appeal level, because if an 8th grader can't understand it, then make it simpler. Clarity should be your first goal. And I love this quote from Woodrow Wilson. He was asked, how long will it take you to prepare to give a great talk or a public speech? And he said, it depends. If I am to speak for 10 minutes, I need a week for preparation. If 15 minutes, I need 3 days. If a half an hour, 2 days. If an hour, I am ready now. Let that sink in. If I am to speak for 10 minutes, I need a week for preparation. 10 minutes is a YouTube video. If I am to speak for an hour, I can do it right now. 1 hour is a live stream. What's the point? It's crazy that this quote was said before YouTube existed. It just speaks to high quality communication is challenging. And if you want to make 10 viral minutes of content on YouTube, imagine if you put a week into that. If you understand your message, but you really aren't refining it, well, hey, let's go live right now and just, chat. Take 60 minutes to get the message across. Man, it's something powerful about that quote that I think could apply to what it is we are doing. Great communicators prioritize simplifying complex ideas. Simplicity is the hallmark of powerful communication. Winston Churchill and JFK were praised for their clear and powerful speeches. Effective communication is about conveying clear, powerful ideas. C.S. Lewis emphasized translating thoughts into accessible language, suggesting that if you can't, your thoughts may be confused. So can you translate your complex topic or difficult to understand topic into everyday accessible language? And if you can't, maybe you need to work harder to distill your thoughts into more accessible communication, especially if you want broader appeal and bigger impact on YouTube. Brevity is crucial. Impactful statements often require fewer words, like the Lord's Prayer or the Gettysburg Address. Short speeches often require more preparation. Effective communication is about concise, impactful content, not length. John Medea's law of simplicity stresses the importance of focus in communication. Remove the unnecessary, highlight the essential. Imagine if on your next video, you removed the unnecessary and you highlighted the essential. Practicing the law of simplicity in communication means less is more and clarity is power. John Maxwell suggests that we should deliver messages simply, slowly, and with a smile for effective communication. Of course, you have to have your own style, and you might say, but Sean, aren't we doing jump cuts and talking crazy like crazy YouTubers? And I think that you've got to understand your audience. You've got to understand your style of content, and different mediums require different methods. But there is something powerful that if the content is rich and clear and specific and poignant, that sometimes slowing down doesn't mean that you're going to lose the audience's attention. If the video is boring, if the video lacks substance, if the video lacks research, well, it doesn't matter how fast or slow you go. And so I think there's something there as it pertains to delivering your messages simply, slowly, and with a smile for effective communication. And great communicators turn complex topics into simple concepts. All right, so we're about to get into law number 3, and I think this one's actually my favorite. But before we do, I want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by thinkmasterclass.com. If you're interested in taking your YouTube channel to the next level or starting a successful channel that gets views and makes money in multiple ways, I want to encourage you. We have a free 1-hour class that's available on demand at thinkmasterclass.com. Actually, depending on when you're watching this, I also teach it live, and we have a couple of those live trainings coming up where I'm also there for Q&A. So check a link out to that in the description or go to thinkmasterclass.com. All right, the first law we covered was the law of content. Secondly was the law of simplicity. And third is the law of visual expression. And those are not in order in the book. There's 16 laws in the book. I really can't emphasize enough that this entire book will improve every single YouTube content creator. I know that's a big endorsement, but I totally believe it. The book is packed with tips, and hopefully this podcast is showing you that truth. The law of visual expression states that showing and telling is more impactful than just telling. And this is interesting. While voice-only communication had its place in radio's heyday, it's essential to incorporate visual elements today. The next generation will receive 90% of content on their phones visually, not verbally. And around 60% of people are visual learners, with images sticking better in their memory than words. Now, this is exciting for us as YouTube content creators and creating video across social media platforms, because obviously that's a visual medium. You know that I don't recommend starting a podcast. I recommend starting a video podcast because of the visual element. And shout out to everybody audio only right now, because of course that is super relevant. We're hanging out as you walk or walk your dog, work out, ear pods, the whole thing. Audiobooks, podcasts are a major opportunity. But of course, YouTube is a visual platform. So here's a few tips. Visuals make messages more memorable in a data-saturated society. Images generate more engagement and discussions, with people being highly responsive to them. Visual stimuli engages the creative and holistic parts of the brain, shaping future creators and empathizers. Now think about this. If you are visually on screen, that doesn't mean you're including visuals in your video. Could you level up your video with B-roll, with supplemental clips and footage, with drawings, with props, with animation? And maybe you can't do all of that right now, but could you dream a little bit bigger about how you could teach, educate, and entertain with your content? The right side of the brain is adept at processing images, synthesizing information, and seeing the bigger picture. Visuals stimulate our imagination and can tell stories better than mere stats. And so a visual on screen showing some data is one thing, but could you also show a picture of somebody that's been impacted by the data? A B-roll clip of somebody that is the subject of your story. And here's some other practical tips related to what could be done visually. Body movement, gestures, and facial expressions are crucial for visual aids as a communicator. If you are just doing talking head video, just sitting down in a video podcast like this, how could you improve your communication with body movement, gestures, facial expressions? The ambience of the room, lights up or down, can greatly impact the energy and focus of the audience. The lighting of your video, the nuances of the lighting, the mood you set can impact the energy and the focus of your audience. Could that affect audience retention and viewer retention? Absolutely. I think the quality of your production, your audio, video, and lighting has an aspect that relates to viewer retention, which connects directly to going viral and getting views. Effective communication involves showing, proving, and acting, and not just speaking. Metaphors and word pictures can vividly illustrate concepts and engage audiences. So here's a practical takeaway. You're planning out your next video. You're outlining the information. Tip 1, tip 2, tip 3. Could you go back through and say, what story could I include here? What metaphor could I include here, or word picture to illustrate this concept or tip? Sometimes I like to share the bare bones, like I'm outlining in Google Docs, the bare bones of my YouTube video, my video podcast. Then I go back through and say, how could I power this up? Could I put a story here? And this is interesting. After a presentation, 85% remember visual content after 3 hours, but only 10% recall oral content after 3 days. Steve Jobs' presentation of the first iPhone was impactful due to its live demonstration. Top TED Talks use visual aids from flip charts to photographs, but some people also don't use any visuals at all. And some of the most viral TED Talks was pure words, communication, voice, tone, stories, humor, whatever they included, which reveals that you can have an effective message without visuals supporting it. But we also see that this is a powerful tool that we can include in our communications. And a good practice is to change the visual expression every 2 minutes to keep the audience's attention. Now, I think that John Maxwell is applying this to the stage. If we apply that to the video, I think you should change the visuals a lot more often than every 2 minutes. We talk about every 7 seconds, every 5 to 7 seconds in a long form video. And those things visually could include switching to a different camera angle, having text pop up on screen, and then think about all the elements of your body movement and behavior. How visually engaging is the video, or how boring is the video? B-roll, clips, things that are changing and shifting, all of that can help keep the audience's attention. And when you do, YouTube rewards you with more views. And so I have a final quote to land the plane on this episode. But as a reminder, if you have not watched our free on-demand YouTube class, the next move after this podcast is to check out thinkmasterclass.com. There's a link in the description down below or in the show notes for the podcast, wherever you listen. Check that out. And it's totally free, 1 hour long. And I really go through the one strategy we're using right now at Think Media. I suppose we're applying it over here on the Think Media podcast channel as well to generate around 400,000 views every single day. So if you're interested in that, check out thinkmasterclass.com. Also, if you want to check out the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication, John Maxwell is one of my favorite authors. His other books on leadership predominantly are really great for business leaders. I think all of us could grow as leaders, but I definitely would recommend that for content creators. Sharpening the skill of communication will level up every single aspect of your creator economy business. And so we talk about a lot of good books, but this one is directly relevant. And I think the Audible is a good move to make for listening while on the go. And then also, if you're on YouTube, smash like. If you're on audio, if you could rate and review the podcast. And I especially want to challenge you. If you're new here, thanks for being here. I really appreciate your time. If you've been listening to the podcast more than 4 episodes, more than 4 weeks, more than 4 months, if you've been here a couple of years and you haven't left a review, especially you're listening right now, you're over on Apple and Spotify, it seriously would mean the world to me if you rated the podcast, reviewed the podcast on Spotify. You can give it a star rating, maybe some other forms of reviews over there. And that just helps us get the word out, because we are on a mission to help people become better communicators through the medium of video. And if you've been experiencing positive effects from your consumption of Think Media content, that is one thing that would be deeply meaningful for me, especially during this season. And I want to say thank you in advance. And thank you for every comment, every like, every subscription, every share that you do. It really means the world. Now, let's give you one final quote. Robert Greene is the famous author of the book Mastery, and this is his quote about mastery. Mastery is not a function of genius or talent. It is a function of time and intense focus applied to a particular field of knowledge. The encouraging thing is you might right now say, Sean, I don't feel like I'm a very good communicator. As you shared all these details, I just feel discouraged, like there's an uphill battle with so much to learn. And I think the encouragement when it comes to mastery is that mastery is not a function of genius or talent. And Robert did some deep research of all these different people that achieved mastery. It's a function of time and intense focus applied to a particular area. And friend, if you set your intention to become a better communicator, to practice, to study, to learn, to read, to listen, it's going to change everything. It's going to level up your videos. It's going to improve your relationships. It's going to make you a better leader. And so investing time into becoming a better communicator is time well spent.